Winters in Pine Hollow were unforgiving. Each year, the tiny mountain town was buried under a thick blanket of snow, isolating its residents from the outside world. But this winter was different. The storm that rolled in was the worst in decades. A relentless blizzard that turned the town into a ghostly wasteland of white. Pine Hollow was a town that thrived on its isolation. Nestled deep within the mountains, it was a place forgotten by time. The townsfolk were a hardy bunch, accustomed to the harsh winters and the solitude they brought. But this winter, there was a different kind of silence. It was a silence that spoke of an unseen presence, a silence that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned residents. The snow fell relentlessly, blanketing the town in a thick white silence. The old-timers huddled around their fireplaces spoke of the winter wind. They said it carried stories, whispers from the past, stories of things best left undisturbed. For Sarah, a freelance writer staying in her late uncle's cabin on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, the isolation was perfect. Nestled deep in the woods, the cabin was a sanctuary for anyone seeking solitude. With no internet and spotty cell service, distractions were minimal, and Sarah could finally work on her long-overdue manuscript. The large bay window provided an unobstructed view of the wintry landscape. The silence of the mountains was a stark contrast to the constant noise of the city. Here, there were no sirens, no car horns, only the gentle crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind. She found an unexpected peace in the isolation. It was as if the mountains themselves were whispering stories to her, stories that she longed to capture in her writing. The solitude was both exhilarating and terrifying. The first night started peacefully. Snow piled up outside as she settled by the fireplace, her laptop glowing softly in the dim room. The rhythmic crackling of wood and the occasional howl of the wind were comforting reminders of her isolation. But as the night deepened, a strange sound broke through the storm, a faint whisper. The outside world, with its deadlines and demands, faded into a distant memory. Here, in the heart of the mountains, Sarah found a rhythm to her life that she had never known before. The silence, once daunting, now held a strange comfort. It was a silence that allowed her to hear her own thoughts, to delve deep into the wellspring of her creativity. The words flowed effortlessly from her mind to the page, each one imbued with the raw beauty of her surroundings. At first she assumed it was the wind slipping through the cracks of the old cabin. But as the minutes passed, the sound grew clearer. It wasn't random howling, it was a voice. "Sarah!" She froze mid-typing, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The whisper was soft, almost delicate, but unmistakably human. She shook her head and chuckled nervously. It had to be her imagination. Section 5. The voice intensifies. Between the storm and her own exhaustion, it wasn't hard to mistake the wind for something more sinister. She tried to return to her work, but the voice came again, louder this time. "Sarah, come outside!" Her stomach twisted as a chill ran down her spine. She turned toward the window, her eyes scanning the snow-covered forest beyond the frosted glass. It was impossible to see anything in the swirling chaos of the storm. One morning, after a night of fitful sleep, Sarah awoke to an eerie silence. The wind, which had been howling for days, had died down, leaving an unsettling stillness in its wake. She stood and walked to the window, pressing her face against the cold glass. The forest was still, eerily so, but the whisper came again, even closer now. "Come outside, I'm waiting." Sarah backed away from the window, her pulse racing. Grabbing her phone, she tried to call the local sheriff's office, but the call wouldn't connect. "No service," the screen read. She cursed under her breath. The storm must have knocked out the towers. The cabin, which had once felt cozy and safe, now seemed suffocating and vast. She checked the locks on the doors and windows, her trembling hands making the task slower than it should have been. When she returned to the living room, the fire had almost gone out, leaving the room steeped in shadow. As she moved to stoke the flames, her eyes caught something outside the window. Footprints. They led from the edge of the forest to her porch, fresh and crisp in the snow. Her heart pounded as she stared, her breath fogging the glass. The storm had erased most of the landscape, but these prints were untouched. The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't outside. "Sarah, I'm here." She spun around, her back against the wall, scanning the room. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the cabin. Summoning her courage, she grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace and crept through the cabin, checking every room. The whispers followed her, growing louder, more insistent. "Come outside, you need to see." Her resolve broke. She couldn't take the oppressive weight of the whispering anymore. Throwing on her coat and boots, she stepped out into the storm, clutching the poker tightly. The icy wind bit at her face as she scanned the clearing. The whispering blizzard finally subsided, leaving Pine Hollow in an eerie silence. The storm had taken its toll, but it had also brought a strange sense of calm. Sarah, now safe and back in the warmth of the cabin, sat by the fire, the iron poker still within reach. She reflected on the haunting events that had transpired. The whispers had led her through a night of terror and mystery, but they had also revealed the hidden truths of Pine Hollow. As the fire crackled and the wind outside began to die down, Sarah knew that the legend of Pine Hollow would be told for generations. It would be a chilling reminder of the whispers in the wind, a story passed down to warn and to wonder. The whispers had become part of the very fabric of Pine Hollow, a place where the past and present intertwined in a dance of shadows and secrets. And though the storm had passed, the echoes of that fateful night would linger forever, whispering their tales to anyone who dared to listen.